Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today by QPest, sponsored by Software Academy. Thank you very much for your votes. The votes, it shows that most of the audience are interested through the strategic management, talking about risk management plan. So we decided to provide you with a risk management plan. So let's get started. Thank you. Right, so welcome today to our session about risk management. So risk management, it is all about all the policies and the procedures that's set by an organization, by a certain institute, a company, in order to set its policy and procedures in how to overcome any risks that might be triggered, right? How to define the risks, how to assess the risk, how to evaluate, and how to manage and to measure the risk. So that's all what is included into the risk management plan. So when it comes to assess, the word assess, it means we need to identify what are the sort of risks that we might be triggered with. For example, there could be business risks, there could be technical risk, financial risks, there could be internal risk inside organizations, right? There could be external, there could be technological, right? So once we assess, we need to define whom is going to be affected with those sort of risks, right, that we have identified. And then we need to know as well to know what are the effects of those risks and how they're going to jeopardize and they're going to affect those sort of stakeholders, right? And we have to find solutions, right? Based on the assessment, we need to find solutions. Now, when it comes to evaluate, right, you need to set, well, the risk into two categories, either quantitative and qualitative. So you evaluate them in a number rating, that is quantitative from 1 to 10. What is the severity level of that risk, right, in the number rating in a mathematical from 1 to 10? Is it 2, 3? So 1 it's low, right, and 10 it's high. Again, qualitative, it is used to represent both the severity level from a text-wise, the severity level high, low, medium, as well the number rating. So in case if you're going to use the qualitative risk analysis, right, so there is no need to use quantitative. Now, managing the risk, it is the way how you're going to respond to the risk, whether you're going to avoid the risk, are you going to exploit the risk in case of its opportunity, whether you're going to, if it's a threat, you're going to avoid it, you're going to transfer it, right? You're going to, if it's an opportunity, you're going to share it, right? So how you're going to manage that risk, whether it's an opportunity or whether it's a risk. Now, it's very important that when you mitigate a risk, right, or you respond to that risk, you need to assess and measure it. So the measure, whether that risk, it had reduced its effect, right? So its effect of threat, or still the threat is still there, right? So you need to know that whether I had cured that risk, I had reduced the effectiveness of that risk, or still the risk deficiency still exists. So when it comes to risk management planning, right, we look onto the risk planning, which we introduce the process and the procedures that an organization or company is going to place in order to how to respond to the risks and how to evaluate and to assess and as well to manage and to measure that risk. Risk identifications, right, it will be done with the whole stakeholders from the projects, right? So everyone will be asked to specify what are the sort of risks that he sees from his vision, from his rule, right, that could be affecting the project, right? Risk analysis, each of these risks, once they're identified, we place them into a risk register, and then they need to be analyzed. Those risks with high potentiality ratings and they cause threats, they will be set into the risk register. Whereas risks with the low potentialities, right, so they will be set into a watch list. And then you need to respond and monitor. So throughout the project life cycle, we will keep on responding, mitigating, or enhancing or exploiting the risk, whether it's an opportunity or whether it's a threat. If it's a threat, so we're going to avoid it, or we're going to mitigate it, or we're going to accept it, right? If it's an opportunity, so we'll enhance it, or we're going to exploit, or we might transfer it, right, or we might share it, okay. And then you have the risk controlling, the controlling of the project, of the risks it is undergone since from the initiation till the closure, right? So the PM on the team, they need, and the executive directors, they need to be overlooking on the whole risks that might find the organizations or the projects, right, from the initiation till the closure. So a risk, it's an event, right, that it can be defined in that might happen or might not include. It could be an opportunity or it could be a stress. So opportunity, it means it's a gain, and a negative, it means it's a loss, right? The ways to determine the risk, we need to ask a certain question. What is the probability of that occurrence of that risk, right? So what is the percentage it's going to happen? Is it 10%, 20% that this risk is going to occur? And when it's going to happen? So when the time, is it expected to happen at the beginning of the project life cycle, at the mid-project life cycle, or at the end of the project life cycle? What is the possible range? So here we're talking about the amount of stake, that is, we're talking about the EMV, expected monetary value, the probability multiplied by the impact. So what is the probability that the risk will occur? Let's say it's 20%, right? And if it's going to occur, will it be a gain or a loss? So if it's opportunity, so it's a gain. If it's a loss, right, so it is a threat, right? So it's going to perform deflation, right, to us. So going to be a loss to us in an economy, right? But if it's a positive, so it's a gain. That's an income will be, revenue will be granted. So what is the anticipated frequency of risk event from the source? So how would that affect that source, that type of risk it will affect us? And what are the sources of that risk? Now we're going to see through our cycle presentation, what are the sources of the risks. Now, when it comes to the risk, there are two types of persons. We do have a project manager who could be a risk averse, or someone who versus a risk prone. A risk averse, it is a negative person, a person who is not willing to take the risk, right? He was always say that I cannot tolerate for that risk. I don't want to take the risk that I might fail. I don't want to take the risk that I might lose money. But in the vice versa, we have the prone, who is a positive person. He is willing to take the risk, whatever circumstances, right? I'm going to lose money, no problem. I'm going to go with it, right? I'm sure, and I like to take the risk, and whatever happens, it happens. Okay? Now, when we talk about the risk, there are two dimensions we need to look: the tolerance, risk tolerance, and the threshold. The tolerance, it is the area in which what is the level of you able to accept that risk, or you will not accept. In other words, you will tolerate that risk, or you will no more tolerate that risk. And a threshold, it is the point which the risk is not being acceptable. So it's an optimum level, right? You will say that I have reached to my limits, right? And I am not going to take any more that risk, right? So take an example, right? Let's say the project sponsor, right? He had invested in a certain project, right? And he gave it to the project management, right? And the project manager, he had spent all the money, right? And they say to the sponsor, oh, I need extra money. Now, the extra from the budget, right? The planned budget. So the point of total assumption, that is the PTA of the sponsor, would say, well, my maximum PTA, that's my maximum threshold, I can grant you only, let's say, $20,000. That's the max I can give. I cannot tolerate further than that. So that's the threshold. That's the optimum level the sponsor can grant to the project manager. Now, the project management plays a very important role as well in the risks. So he's the one who's going to spend time in order to monitor and control various aspects of the project. He's the one who's going to set the reward system for any defined resource who's going to find a certain risk. Well, good job, you did a great job. You have found that risk, there is, I'm going to motivate you, right? Anyone who's going to find other risks throughout the project will be given a certain reward, right? Keep the stakeholders to be involved with the project progress, progress report, status on time, status report, focus report, time report, right, being given to the to the stakeholders. Always to be stay at the head of a project, and that's a challenge for a project manager. Always to be ahead of the project and to be under the budget. Now, when we look on the risk categories, as we have explained at the beginning, we do have risks that could be internal. So those are the ones that are affecting internally the organization, such as the time, the scope, and the equipment, right? The staff and the people and the poor planning, right? Those are all, those are all those are all right. They are the internal factors that they affect the organization. Okay. The other things is that we have external risks, right, such as the market shift, the geographical location of the market, the regulatory imposed rules that it comes from the right, that it comes from the certain policy and procedures of the organization, governmental rules. So all the government, they set certain rules or and certain disobediences that it affects and constraints that affects the organization from accomplishing the work because of the governmental rules, right? Technical change in technology, right? So change in technology, right? There could be different softwares, right? The different technologies are being introduced into the market. Today, we're talking about the ways of mobilizations and the way of, let's say, in mobile applications today, right? We used to use the Android Studio. Today, we're talking about the Xamarin across platform. It's being used that can work with the iPhone as well as the as well as the Android. We do have as well the Kotlin language being used with the Android team to build up the applications instead of the Android Studio, right? So different technologies are being changing, right? You had that time we had the SMS, then we talked about the MMS, multimedia services, right? We were talking about the learning management system, content management systems. Today we're talking about advancement in technology, TPL, being used in the technology. So advancement of technology, you need to respond to these changes. You need to be onto that technology, right? For example, Microsoft Azure, right? Today we're talking about how to plan your projects, right? So that has shifted from MS Project Microsoft and from Primavera, and today we're talking about Azure. So all of that, Azure, right? So all of these technologies, right, needs to be set into considerations. So the sources of risks, the risk it comes from customer. Customer does not need to provide with corporation, all right? Customer does not provide with the information to produce the product. Customer does not perform the user acceptance test, right? And the PM, lack of PM efforts. PM is not taking care of the project, he's not following up, he's not providing with flexibility to the team, he's not providing assistance to the team. Project management stakeholders, they are not being as a shareholders, they're not working together. Resistance of change, right? For example, certain areas in government areas, they don't want to change to digital. They need to be working still on paperwork. Suppliers, lack of supplies, lack of works, right? Lack of orders being given, just-in-time delivery are not being provided, product provided with low quality. All of these are all areas of risks that can be triggered, right? Now, it is required that in every meeting, take it as a tip note and a rule of thumb, right? That in every meeting, you need to discuss the first thing in any managerial position, the risks that the organization is facing, the risks of the projects that are being operated, the operations that's done, right? So always getting the first topic, it's about risks, right? And risk management. Hope this video was a great well. All looking forward to your vote